Whoa, we are back for some more Bleach Soul Resonance. And this is going to be a bit of a, I guess, like a miscellaneous things that I've noticed in the game, a sort of roundup after, we played for a month now. We've had a month of Bleach Soul Resonance, a month to experience this game and sort of, just pick things up minutely as we've gone along, right? I'm sure you've been playing and, maybe you have an idea of like, well, now that I've played for this long, this is like something that's important now. I've noticed that this is what I want to be spending my stamina on, or, I'm running out of this resource more and more. And again, this is going to be a free-to-play perspective. So if you're not free to play, maybe you have like resource bottlenecks or, insight onto raising character power that someone like me will not have because I am free to play, right? You might have a completely different wall you're facing, right, at any given point. So I want to get into this by just starting off by saying, like, we've got Sasuke Aizen here. Aizen is 25,000 power. He has no boundaries. He has one of his pieces of gear not raised because, if I'm honest, it hasn't looked like I've needed it. And I don't want to raise trash because as a free-to-play player, this is stamina for me. This isn't just like, oh, just raise something really quickly. It's like, this is stamina. I'm losing like important stamina when I raise stuff like that. So I haven't been able to do that. He's got a stamp that is not his own unique stamp. And all of that amounts to 25,000, as well as a 6-star piece of gear, which is one of my only 6-star pieces of gear, right? So that's pretty like unique for him. We can also look over here and see that his crit rate is 52%, and his crit damage is 96%. This is all before factoring in any sort of buffs and some amount of logic concerning his gear and weapons. This is not always actually accurate, it seems like. So whatever that number ends up actually being, we don't know, just because I can't do it off the top of my head of like where are all the pieces. Same thing with here, right? 32% here, 88 here. That 32% is probably coming from a crit piece. Yeah, try this 27% here. And then I probably have another piece somewhere. Yeah, whatever the baseline is. But all this is to say is that this ends up to be 20,000, which seems pretty low. But when I'm using him, I don't really feel that like low level. And what I've noticed over time is that 25,000 tends to be a very sweet spot for free-to-play player characters right now. You can see 20,000 right here, 23,000 right here. And again, this is with his core stamp, which is pretty leveled, and Ascension 2, by the way. And that's what we're going to get into an interesting thing. So Ascension 2, and that all leads to, by the way, level 1 stamps on his actual gear, because I have not actually gotten gear that looks good enough to raise. I kind of want a crit damage piece, just so he can continue to give his crit damage with his actual skill, which is this one right here. But I have not since found a good crit damage piece for him, okay? So all of that makes sense. You're looking at that and you're like, okay, well, what's the bigger point here then? Why are you showing this? Well, what about my Yoruichi, who tends to be my highest character, but you look at her power and you're like, well, wait. Her power is 23,000. And her stamp is a 5-star. So what does 23,000 mean in this case? Well, what if I put her on this one, which is a higher level? So I'll equip this. So that changed it to 23,992. Not that much more. But as you guys know, I have a 5 Ascension core stamp because I cannot pull anything but Yoruichi. And you can see how the stats are just kind of dwarfed there, right? So we press equip on that. Remember, we're at 23,000 going on 24,000. Now we're at 35,000. 35,898. Now we're talking about a character who is at 26,000 or 36,000, which is 13,000 more than what she was just at, right? So just one more comparison. So it's 13. That raised her singularly by 13,000. Yeah, about 12,000 flatly actually. And I guess the reason I want to point this out is this obviously gives her a ton of benefits, right? It is her core stamp. And it is something I talked about prior, which is that you might not really know the power of your character until your core stamp is equipped. Not just for the boost to stats, or boost to the actual like thing it does, like the 200% ult damage here, the rate of Shunko by an extra 40% here. you might not like know what your character's power is, just because like it balloons incredibly, especially with dupes. And that's why I said that Yoruichi is funny, because it seems like I can only actually find Yoruichi's core stamp when I play this game. Something about Yoruichi, she just will not stop showing up, and I can't change it, and you can't change it, and Bleach Soul Resonance dev team at Billy can't change it. I am cursed with her. She is my curse, and she is a blessing in so many ways. But I would kind of like Aizen's core stamp, and I would kind of like Hitsugaya's core stamp. So in that way, she is my greatest curse. You know, JJK, you know, I got the finger of Sukuna, I'm swallowing that bitch down. I've become a cursed dog. Like, his cursed nature has filled me. Pause. Please pause. Please. But yeah, that's like a thing I've noticed, is just getting back to the main point, is that you might have sort of a faulty perspective on how strong your character is as a free-to-play player, and that includes myself, obviously. I actually think that, interestingly enough, because remember, core stamps used to be a banner, right? I'm not gonna lie, not being able to pull for the core stamp is actually, you know, because these are weapon stamps, not being able to pull for the core stamp and having to like go through the RNG, is it worse than just pulling on it like a banner? It might be. It's very, funnily enough, we thought this was a blessing before the game came out, but it might be. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna lie. But that takes us to another point, as we see these, you know, pieces of content here, our farming content. It brings us to the question of like, well, how do you raise characters besides the core stamp, right? Besides the weapon stamp, which, you know, I'm really struggling with here. Well, the other big way is obviously your stamps. One thing I have noticed, and let's click on this, and let's click to, I don't want to start any of these up, of course. Yeah, let's click here. So attack percent here, these substats aren't really doing it for me. I need to farm better gear for her. We could do attack percent here with a ult charge here. Doesn't really look good either. So you can see that I'm sort of just waiting. But if I were to go to enhance and I was about to, you know, level this up, let's say, and I will do this because why not? I have a ton of the purple because I just dust my materials. Once you get to this point, you see that I have 600 of this material right here. I think the biggest bottleneck for free-to-play players is going to be stamina, which you're spending on this material right here. Stamp Ectoplasm. Man, you chew through so much of this material and your actual con. It is insane. I think that most of the time that I am actually spending, and look at that, we're at 36,000 now with 3,200 attack stat and a crit rate of 32%, which should be higher. Our crit rate should be higher, but let's actually check out, that's 27% there. So if we were to ascend here, which would go to a 6-star, we would get more. I'm just trying to do the math. Like, how does that add up? So 27%. Does it start at 5%, I wonder? Is that what's happening? What is the base crit chance? It is 5%. Okay, so that makes sense. And that's not counting any sort of abilities that she has. So, but yeah, if you have not just been around like grinding your stamina, dude, I spend so much stamina on con and ectoplasm. I would be shocked if this is not the case for you guys out there. I would be shocked if whales especially aren't having this problem, but con is a resource, and it's not like it's like a dead resource. Like, it's pretty, you get it pretty fast, but every single time you press this button, it is dire to your resources. And as far as stamina goes, I feel like the pills have been coming pretty fast. Like, go ahead and comment down below, but like the stamina nourishers, they've been kind of chugging, right? We've been getting a lot of them in this event versus, you know, the prior event with Toshido, right? Like, I'm sure you guys feel it too. I do feel like Jade is pretty consistently trickling in. Since summoning, what is this? I've made about like 1100 Jade or something like that. I'm not doing the math, you know, perfectly. I don't remember, you know, perfectly what I was at before, but I do believe it was somewhere around like I was at like 11,000, and now I'm somewhere in 1,200, 1,300, which means that it's somewhere around there, as well as building up a stockpile of tickets. And you can see that the stamp gotcha tickets are actually the least likely to show up, which is interesting, right? It seems we get a lot of the, again, this is just sort of a recap of like, what do the resources look like for a free-to-play player, a month in now. The stamp gotcha tickets seem to be at a premium, almost to the point where I would consider starting to spend the advanced ticket stubs. I start to wonder if I should spend those maybe on stamp gotcha tickets. These are all just thinking out loud, like, what should I do here, what should I do here, what should I do here. It's like, this is starting to look a little more interesting as like a prospect, right? But yeah, I do think that like Bleach Soul Resonance is a very fun game. None of this is meant to turn out to be like a negative or anything. I'm just talking through like, as you play through these games, as they become more normal, because right now we're in the halcyon period. We're in the, oh my god, everything's so good right now. Everything, they're giving us so much currency and so much gifts, and every day there's a reward, and every day we get mail, and every day we get this, and every day we get that. That's going to slow down, obviously. And when it does, what are we left with? So here we have Ikaku, who's at 20,000. My Ikaku actually has a pretty good piece of gear on him. Yeah, it's this one right here. This is pretty good. As well as his crit rate, especially with the ailment damage, because he is stacking ailments, not bad. And then we have more attack percent here. So his only thing was that I needed at the time stamps to level him up, and you can see that here I've got his core stamp ready to go. 300 as well as 90,000. So bang, we're gonna do this because it is his max, and 151,000. Look at it disappear, man. Look at it just disappear. But look at him go. Wasn't he just 16,000? So he got 4,000 from that. A ton of stats from that. And that's where, we end up in the position where it's like, well, go to battle. I'm now completely out of con. I click this. I, use 2 of these. We're going to press this button until I feel good about myself again. There we go. So now we're back to, again, it's not like it's an insurmountable thing to get con, because it builds back up pretty fast, but it vanishes. And we're going to go here, and just for good measure, we're going to ding 2 of these. And then we're going to go to Stamp Ascension. And we have 335 now. We're just going to click through this a few times, and that'll essentially make up the amount almost that we just lost on raising Ikaku. And yeah, this is just sort of the things I think are the most important. I think that Weapon Ascension and the Karakura Defense slash Ascensions, I think you should do them all for the XP and stuff. But Weapon XP and Character XP and the like, I think that if I go back into the store here, I almost wonder if you should never spend any materials on it, because you could just spend here. And let me grab these. I didn't even know these were stocked yet. This is the most valuable resource in the game, I think, in a lot of cases. And you should just be grabbing it every time as best you can. So I'm going to do that. You do not get a lot of that material. I would not get any of these core stamps unless you, or weapon stamps, unless you like really fuck with a character, because they're just, you need to get this. This is so important. As well as I wouldn't really buy out these until you have these. And this, I think this is going to be one of the biggest things, is like, are you playing the game? Because you need to be grabbing these if you're playing. We'll go here. Oh, we can finally grab the ticket type shit, dude. We haven't been able to get this before, so we need level 4 for that. Look at that, dude. Look at my guild. That's pretty good. But yeah, I've been buying from this thing as well every once in a while, because these don't seem to be nearly as important. You can see I already bought out the 20 here, which is not a like super amount either, but it's just anything to supplement that like deficit that you essentially go into. Yeah, but I hope that makes sense. I hope this has been a video that is like, at least partially interesting to follow around. Oh, we got a temple here. Okay, we'll end it off here. Can we get a Kaku's weapon? Let's go. Come on, gang. We need him. Ooh, nope. What do we get? We got Yudidu's weapon, which is unfortunately completely useless to me, because that character is never going to see my teams. because I have Aizen and Toshido. So I will never use her because I have Aizen as a DPS, and I will never use her because I have Toshido as a DPS. Sad day for our girl, but that is level 5, and getting level 5 is very strong. Actually, before we do this, just as another stat, 461. And when we ascend 461, what does it change to, I wonder? 4884. So much less than the core stamp, certainly. Much less. But yeah, this is a fun little, you know, just talking with me, just yapping with me, because I have been sort of like trying to piece together what is power really? What does power mean in the context of Bleach Soul Resonance? What does this number mean? You know, what changes this big number? Why does Yoruichi have this huge number and then everyone else is sort of lagging behind? And yeah, this is just sort of an not really an experiment, because it's not like I'm like, oh, I'm in the data crunching the numbers, but sort of a demonstration of like what vaguely changes your character's power the most and how the game quantifies power and things like that. As far as stamps, by the way, I think this is going to be the most important one, is getting crit rate here. I would like for them to add a filter that sorts by the main stat. But you can see crit rate is mostly, but you can also get crit damage. I think crit damage is a hugely powerful one if you're going to go attack percent as well. But the issue is that you're not able to really make up the loss of, like, you know, getting crit rate on that piece. So you can see here as I skip through, it's just attack percent again. So you can essentially get a double attack percent or ultimate charge main stat, but you're missing the crit rate entirely. And I just don't know if that's ever going to be the, you know, the way to go when you could just get crit rate. The only one I could see that being valuable for is if you go to Toshido and you had his weapon, because his weapon gives you 50% or 40% or something like that, which is crazy. It's either that or his core stamp, which you can see I have neither. But yeah. With all that being said, though, I've been Lone. Like if you liked the video, subscribe to the club, we'll make it, and peace.